Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are doing part 2 of Photoshop basic tutorials. Last time we left off where we made just a customized pattern from the ones which are already preset in Photoshop CS6, and some basic tutorials about selection tools and stuff. If you haven't checked that, I request you to check the part 1. So today we will start with how to do how to bring a picture and make it a texture file. So let me just hide it. Let's say I will bring a picture from here, from outside. Let's say this one. I want to make it a texture. So rule is you don't bring it here in this file itself. You want to bring it outside. Okay, so you will put it over here or open it as a separate file in Photoshop. So I'm bringing it outside, dragging and drop. So I have my picture over here. What you need to do is you need to come over here on the edit, define pattern, and you can just name your pattern over here and say okay. So I come back to my file. So let's say I want to make a pattern of like this, like a border over here with that texture. So I come over here on my right side where I did before the SolidWorks and patterns. So I come here, click on pattern, and the most recent pattern you have created will be coming here. Okay, so I have my pattern over here. You can change your scale. Since the pattern was a very small scale picture, it is going to come like this. So I can just increase the size and make it a good looking one. I can also move it around. Let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, that's good. And this is my pattern, and say okay. So you got your pattern with a picture. This is how you can do almost all of it. So let's say I want to give a background. For my background I want let's say this one. So I bring this, I drag and drop outside, I say edit, define pattern, pattern 2, and say okay. After this you can actually close this. You don't need to keep it here, you can just close it. Let's say I want to do the whole page. I select my whole page over here with my square rectangle marquee tool. I keep saying it's square, I don't know why. And let's go over here, pattern. So if you see, the most recent pattern have come here. You can increase again just because it's like a very small one. If you are choosing something very high resolution, bigger pictures, is going to fill it up, and say okay. Now let's say you are doing a presentation board or any kind of graphical board and you want it to be faded. Simply just come over here, hover here with the opacity. You can reduce the opacity here. So if you see, it's giving you that very gradient, very light watermark effect. You can also play with the fill colors. Yeah, and this is how you can do it. So we are done with patterns. Let's see what we have done. We have done with all these three. Let's see how these works, how these editing tools work. So let me bring my trusty old square which I have done before. If you see over here, this square is a bit of transparent even though it's above the layer of the background I created. Why is that? Is because I have chosen it to be multiplied. You can go to normal and it's going to be again normal. There are different color, different types over here. If you see, just play around, look which one suits you. You can also create some very abstract or minimal digital art using this kind of techniques. Okay, so let me just keep the multiply for now. Okay, so I need to select this one. So let's work with the editing tools. So I come here, the FX things written. These are called blending options. All these you can have either from here, or you can just open the pop-up window and you can control from here. The most used one, or especially by me, is the drop shadow. It's really cool, I love it. So this is the drop shadow. Let's increase the distance so you can see the effect. So when you increase the distance, it will just increase how far the shadow goes. So this is one. The spread defines how sharp it is, or how large it spreads. The size is again the size of the shadow, so as the size gets bigger it becomes less sharper. There is this angle over here. Okay, let's say I keep my angle to this one. There is the multiply. Okay, so how much shadow, how darker or opacity you want the shadow to be. Even the color you can change it, and I think the blend mode is always kept multiply. So yeah, and there is your outer glow if you want an outer glow. So let me zoom on here. Let me just say okay, and I will zoom a bit over here so you can see, and go back to my blending options. So whatever blending options you are doing, it's coming in your layers, so you can easily hide or unhide over here your effects, or delete your effects. So even from here both are the same. If you see, it's already controlled automatically from here. This is an outer glow. This is a pattern overlay. You can overlay your shape with a pattern over here. I usually don't use it, so I'll just keep that. There is inner shadow, so the inner shadow will be coming inside the shape. That means let's go to inner shadow. It's a distance, so again it's the same, the distance. So how much is the side from the inside. There is an opacity over here. Okay, there is an opacity, and again the same of angle. So one thing you notice is that as I'm changing the angle, both inner and outer shadow is changing, and this happens not only for this object, for all of it. So I am going to show you right now. After this I finish this one, and the last one which I really use, it's stroke. So sometimes when you bring something and it's very thin, for example, sometimes I bring something from AutoCAD and it's very thin, so what do? I just press stroke. It's actually like a border, and I usually make it like 1, so it's very subtle, and I reduce the opacity, so there is a border but it's not so obvious, and you can change the color again. So about the shadow, so let's come here. So I'm done with this shape. I will make another shape, or I'm just bringing my circle over here. Oops. So hover over the object, right click, and just choose whichever it was my gradient fill, and it will give you the object. This is one tricks you can say. So let's do the drop shadow here. Okay, and the angle is 45. So when I change, if you see, my rectangle shadow is changing as well. Okay, why is that? Is that it's the whole objects. Why is that? Is this because the whole board or whole file has one light source, it assumes to be. So Not the opacity, it doesn't like handle with any kind of opacity or colors or anything or the spread, but just the angle from where the light is coming. Okay, so we are using a global light, so that's why it's changing. Let's turn this off, and now we can see that we can control the shadow independently. But when you are using a global light, all of these shadows is going to work on the same way. This is very useful for when you have a project. For example, you are rendering a interior floor plan you are rendering. Usually the light comes from one source, so this is a very good idea in that kind of place, that you are having a unified shadow, and you are able to define where your light source is. Okay, so we are done with that, and let's go to some other kind of stuff. So let's say we are having this gradient. There is also a gradient like here. This gradient tool is a bit different. Let's do something with this. I don't usually use it. You can use it. So this gradient will depend on the colors you have over here. So let me take something very strong over here. Okay, and I come to my background, or let me come over here. Let's try if I can do the gradient here. I cannot because it's a fill layer. Let me come in the background. Yes, I can. So I will just drag and drop like this. So this is how this gradient works. It will just create a whole lot of gradient, and it only works once, so that means it's just one directions. You can also have different types, but yeah, this is how things work. And it doesn't create any separate layer. If you see over here, it's not going to make any separate layer, unlike the one which we make from here. So this is another reason why I don't like to use this, because of the not being able to creating a different layer. So I like to edit my layers all the time, so this is why. We have a bucket, we have a paint bucket. It's a very famous one. It's the same as what we have in our paint application. So you just select something. Let's try the bucket, and you can just fill the layer. Okay, and Control D to deselect over here. We have our trusty old eraser. The eraser size and the shape of the eraser control is over here on the top. You have your size of erasers. You have different types. It's a feather or it's a hard eraser. You have other options here. Let's try to erase something. So I am in my background layer, so I can erase this. You can change the opacity and flow. So my flow is reduced to 52%. That means it's going to erase a bit in a low flow. If I make it 100%, it's going to erase straight away. If I do the opacity low, it's going to erase pieces by pieces. That means it's not going to erase all the things at once. This is very nice in giving some kind of effect. So let's try something on the gradient. So when you hover anywhere for any fill pattern or anything, at first it will not let you. You need to click on it and say OK. So now you can raster this file, and because it's like a gradient, so it's like that. So let me just bring it up on top. Because of my this layer, it's shown like that. So let me try to erase something. I'm going to erase a bit of this one. So let me just erase. So if you see here, it's giving you some kind of shadow, or let me just erase the drop shadow. So it's giving you some effect over here. So this is how things work. Okay, and we have our crop tools. Again, this is something so one interesting thing about crop tool is it's not cropping any particular layer or anything. It's going to crop the whole file, so you have to be very careful about that. You can only use it in the beginning or at the end of your project. You have different types. You have unconstrained, you can have square, you can have all these shapes, or just unconstrained. If you don't want it, just say cancel, don't crop. We have this eyedropper. This is very cool. I use it all the time. So for example, you have your file, you want to make a fill layer. I want to make a box over here with the same color of this orange. So what you do, come over here, solid color, I want the same. So this is my eyedropper, and I come here and I pick colors, and I say okay. You can pick colors anytime. For example, this yellow, you want it this color, just click on it and you can bring that color. Anytime you can just pick colors by just clicking on it. I use this heavily. This is a brush tool. Again, I don't use the pencil or anything. I use brush tool more. It's again a paintbrush. For using it, again, you need to do the same as the eraser. Say okay, you can paint. Something about the paint, again, similar to the gradient tool, it doesn't create a layer. Okay, it doesn't create any separate layers. So once you start painting on some layer, it's going to be there unless you can control Z and undo it, but it's going to be there if you see over here. So be careful with the paint. You should know what you are doing. You can reduce your opacity and try, and then start painting. This is paint bucket. So over here we have 6 tools like these. One is blur, sharpen, smudge, and the other one is dodge, burn, and sponge. I usually use the burn and dodge for highlighting more, and burn for like burning for sure. So let's try something. I will try on this one. So again, it's the same. It will ask you to allow it. So there are a few options here: shadows, midtones, and highlights. Now there is no definite way of which one to choose. It depends on the file you created. It depends on the color you are working on. So something that works as a highlight in this color might not work as the same in this color or this color. So you need to just experiment with it. So I will just do my exposure a bit light. So if you see here, this is the effect of highlight. Let's choose midtone. This is how the midtone is. And shadows, this is how the shadow is not working over here anything, just very lightly it's working. So this is how this is. Let's undo them. Okay, this is going to take a long time, so let's just do something. Let me go to burn tool. I will increase the exposure here. Again, let's do the highlight. This is how the burn highlight is. Let's go midtone. This is how the midtone is. Pretty same. Shadows, nothing else happening. So if the same I want to do in this folder, it's going to be showing me differently. The burn is more prominent over here. The shadow, if you saw, the shadow in that blue didn't work, but here it's working. Midtone, it's barely working here. Highlights, same, it's not much working. Let's try the dodge. Shadows, not much. Midtones, somewhat and highlight. Yeah, so the highlight is making it really reddish color, so it depends on what kind of color you are working with. This is very cool again for rendering floor plans and elevations. In my next episodes I will be showing how to render interior floor plans and sections and etc. This one over here, smudge tool, I never use it much, so it's like smudging. It will just smudge your folder, sorry, your picture or anything. It takes a bit time. If you repeatedly click on it, it takes a bit time to load. Sharpen, it will just sharpen your picture. It's not visible much, but you can see the after effect, so it's like you can see very lightly. And blur, you can also see very lightly. My blur is, so when you repeatedly click on it, you will see the effect very late, but it's going to be showing you some kind of effect over here. So I think we are done over here, and I have just few things left. So let's see with the text. I have text left, and I guess I'm done. Maybe I will show some of the filters over here. I will talk about them. I will talk about what I have learned so far, my mistakes, and how to cope those mistakes. And see you guys in the next episode. Bye.